All right, let's dive into one of the biggest questions in tech right now. How in the world do we build AI that we can actually trust? This is a real journey from writing code to building confidence. And it all starts with understanding just how big the problem is. And the stakes? They are incredibly high. I mean, we're talking about biased hiring algorithms, catastrophic system failures. The list goes on. The real world consequences of AI going wrong are just piling up. This isn't some far off sci fi problem. It's happening right now, and it's seriously damaging public trust. So that brings us to the big question, right? How do we fix this? How can companies build AI that we can all rely on? Now, it's a huge challenge, for sure. But the good news is there's a roadmap for getting it right. Okay, first things first, we have to get our heads around a really critical point. True trust in AI goes way beyond just checking some legal boxes. You can follow every single rule and still completely fail to earn the public's confidence. Think of it like this. A social license is kind of like the unspoken permission that we, as a society, give a company to operate. And for AI to really succeed and be accepted everywhere, it needs that broad public buy-in. It has to earn our trust. So, how does a company actually go about earning that trust? Well, you can't just wing it. It takes a clear blueprint, a practical guide for building accountability right into the DNA of the development process. We need a map for this journey. And lucky for us, some leading experts at the Center for Information Policy Leadership, or CIPL for short, they've created exactly that. A framework that takes these vague ideas about responsible AI and turns them into concrete, repeatable steps. And here it is. This is the CIPL Accountability Framework. Now, the most important thing you'll notice is its shape. It's a cycle, a continuous loop. And that tells you something huge right away. Accountability isn't a one-and-done checklist. Nope, it's a constant process of learning and improving. This is basically our compass for the entire journey. This framework is built around 7 core elements, and you can think of each one as a critical stop on our map. It all starts with leadership and oversight. You gotta have buy-in from the very top. That leads to risk assessment, so you can figure out what could go wrong. That then informs the policies and procedures you create. Of course, transparency is absolutely key, so people actually understand what the AI is doing. You back that up with company-wide training and awareness. And because it's a cycle, you need constant monitoring and verification, and a solid plan for response and enforcement when things inevitably don't go as planned. So let's start where the framework does, with the most critical piece of the puzzle, leadership. Real, meaningful accountability doesn't just bubble up from the bottom. It has to be driven relentlessly from the very top of an organization. What this really means is that senior execs and the board have to be the biggest champions for responsible AI. It's all about creating a culture where accountability isn't just one person's job. It's a shared, company-wide responsibility that every single employee gets and feels a part of. And this isn't just about sending out a memo once a year. As Carolyn Louveau for MasterCard says, it has to be a consistent drumbeat from the top, making it part of the organization's very rhythm. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, it means appointing a clear owner, a dedicated AI champion. It means defining your ethical principles so you have a North Star to guide every single decision. It also means creating a cross-functional ethics board to tackle the really tough, high-risk cases. And maybe most importantly, it's about making it crystal clear that this is everyone's job. Okay, so leadership has set the course, but how do we actually put the other pieces of the framework, like risk assessment and transparency, into practice? Let's talk about turning these big ideas into action. A huge part of this is doing a proper AI risk assessment. And look, this isn't about trying to avoid all risk. That's impossible. It's about managing it smartly. The process is pretty straightforward. First, you triage the risk. Is it high, low, somewhere in between? Second, you assess the potential harms, and crucially, you create a plan to mitigate them. And finally, you document everything and kick the really high-risk stuff up to that ethics board for another look. Now, that whole risk process forces you to ask a really important strategic question. Are you just building new tech, a strategy for AI, or are you actually using AI to solve real business problems, which is a strategy with AI? See the difference? The most successful companies do both. They don't just build shiny new tools, they integrate them thoughtfully to create real value. And that entire process has to be guided by accountability. And you know what? None of this works without transparency.
This isn't just some buzzword, it's the absolute bedrock of trust. It means being open about how your AI works, what data it's eating up, and what it can, and just as importantly, can't do.
You've actually seen this in action all over the place. You know when a social media platform has that little button that explains, why am I seeing this ad? That's transparency. Or when a company publishes a big annual report on how they're actually living up to their own AI principles, that's accountability. It's all about making the invisible visible. So you go through this whole journey. You implement the framework from leadership all the way to transparency. So what's the big payoff? Well, we finally reach the true destination, earning, and even more importantly, keeping public trust. And let's be super clear here. This is not just about avoiding fines or dodging bad press. The companies that are leading the pack see this as a massive competitive advantage. Building accountable AI is a smart investment that pays off with the most valuable thing you can have, your customers' trust. This slide really brings it all home. Right at the center, you've got the AI, which always comes with a trade-off between its benefits and its risks. To manage that, you need those three pillars of responsible design: fairness, transparency, and accountability. When you get those right, you start to build trust. And that trust is what allows you to enter into that social contract with the rest of us. That's your social license to innovate responsibly.
Ultimately, the goal here isn't just to build smarter machines. The real destination of this whole journey is to build AI systems that aren't just powerful and innovative, but are also profoundly and provably trustworthy.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. It's a simple question, but it's a powerful one for every leader, every developer, really every single one of us to ask. Is the focus just on building AI, or is it on building trust? Because in the end, you really can't have one without the other.